Silas was on a business trip abroad when he got caught in a terrorist attack. Calls flooded in from everyone. My mother-in-law said she and my father-in-law were at the embassy, waiting anxiously for me to go there and sort things out. Even my dad, who hadn't called me in 10 years, rang. He claimed he had connections at the embassy and could arrange to get Silas repatriated. Even my best friend, Silas's brothers, his colleagues, our neighbors, they all phoned, asking for updates. Only me. Mid-postpartum confinement, calmly ended call after call. After all, this was the same man who'd seen news that his ex-girlfriend, the war correspondent, was trapped in a terrorist hot zone, and had rushed off to check on her, abandoning his family and daughter without a second thought. Back then, I clutched my belly, amniotic fluid soaking through, and asked him, "Are you sure you're willing to abandon your family and daughter to fly to that war-torn country? If you go, Silas, I won't take the fall for any of it." Silas hadn't answered, but the frantic way he'd slammed the door said it all. So if he was hellbent on destroying himself, why should I save him? Silas had always loved watching the international news channel. I never got why until 2 days ago, when a story broke. A Chinese female war correspondent had been captured by terrorists while reporting. The footage flashed by in an instant, but I recognized her. Vivian, the channel's most famous anchor. I was sitting on the couch, huge with child, eating cantaloupe, feeling sorry for the reporter, when Silas knocked over the fruit plate. In a panic, he stood up so fast, his knee slammed hard into the coffee table. The impact made my own belly clench. But he didn't even flinch. Stiffly, he stumbled to the kitchen for water, only to hit the hot water button, burning himself so badly he dropped and shattered the cup. He rushed to rinse his mouth with cold water, then fled to our room, slamming the door behind him. An hour later, he burst out, "I have to go on a last-minute business trip." My fingers tightened around the cantaloupe, but I stood calmly. "Silas, my due date is any day now. This is the worst time for you to leave. What if I go into labor suddenly?" I pressed. "You know my mom died giving birth to my brother, both mother and child, and are you dying to meet our daughter? Don't you want to be the first face she sees?" His face paled, but only for a moment. "This trip is crucial. I have to go. But I promise, I'll be back before you give birth." I laughed even as my belly seized with cramps, even as fluid gushed down my legs like an unstoppable faucet. "Fine, but Silas, let me get the ugly words out first. You'll bear every consequence of this choice." "I won't take an ounce of it." Maybe my tone was too grave. He trembled slightly. Then he swore, I swear, I'll come back safe." He dashed to pack a few clothes, pulled on his shoes in a rush, and headed for the door. I called out, softening despite myself, "Silas, wait." He turned, annoyed. "You already said I could go. What now?" My palms clenched shut as the pain in my belly flared, but I kept my voice steady. "You forgot your passport." I dragged myself, legs soaked in amniotic fluid, to the room, fetched his passport, then handed him a bank card. It held every cent of his salary he'd transferred to me in our 7 years of marriage. Silas's hand shook as he took them, his eyes glistened red. For a second, I thought he might stay, but he stuffed both into his bag and swore again, "I'll be back before the baby comes." The hollow echo of the slamming door hung in the air. I dialed 911, then the confinement center. A man who couldn't even notice my water breaking, vowing he'd return in time for the birth. Ridiculous. Silas and I met in a hiking club back then. Work stress crushed me. Lived for weekends. When I'd hike to recharge, he joined the club the year after me. At first, we were just fellow hikers, but as we kept being the first to reach summits together, we grew close. He worked in finance, I in tech. He loved hiking, and so did I. And the 100th mountain we climbed, he asked me out. No romance, no frills, just, "Linda, let's date." I said yes. After all, my dad had been romantic once. He'd lit fireworks that set half the town ablaze to court my mom, even got arrested, but marriage hadn't changed his obsession with having a son. He made my mom drink endless herbs, and she died in childbirth. Romance meant nothing to me. Grand gestures meant less. Steadiness mattered, and Silas was steady. He never missed a date. His gifts were boring, but he always brought them. He never offered to pick me up in the rain, but came the second I asked. 3 years later, we married. Married life was no different from when we were dating. I cooked, he washed dishes. I'd buy groceries, and he'd head home early to steam the rice. Those quiet, gentle days made me think. For a long time, That Silas was perfect for me that changed 3 years ago at his college classmate's wedding. He took me to the reception, and at the bachelor party, one of Silas's drunk friends grabbed his hand, tears streaming. Silas, it kills me to see you like this, so lifeless. He sniffled. I'm married now, happy but looking at you? It breaks my heart. He slurred on, if only Vivian hadn't left to be a war correspondent you wouldn't have shut down like this. Frozen your heart over. Silas's gaze flickered to me instantly. Don't he listen to him, the das drunk. I smiled and said nothing, but on the drive home, I let the words hang. Silas. I have plenty of flaws but one strength. I cut ties clean when love's gone. He stood in the shadow of night. His expression unreadable after that, though. Vivian vanished entirely from our lives. Until now. I hadn't answered any calls, just finished breastfeeding my daughter at the postnatal care center when my mother-in-law burst in, urgent. Linda, why aren't you picking up? Your father-in-law's about to lose his mind at the embassy, she insisted. You need to come home with me now, we need Silas's documents for the embassy. I met her urgency with calm, reciting 6 numbers. 666,313, she blinked, confused. I tucked the blanket around her before explaining. I'm in confinement, I can't go out, that's the house code, grab whatever documents you need. Her hands trembled. Linda, how can you be so cold? Silas is in a war zone. His life hanging in the balance. Haven't you seen his mass text? He said he's shot in the leg, hiding in a stranger's house. Dodging gunfire. She pressed, voice shaking, I know you're recovering. But this is an emergency, can't you just come to the embassy for a minute to check on him? I said flatly. He texted me repeatedly before the mass message. I ignored him. She stumbled. Nearly falling, guilt twinged. She couldn't deny she'd been kind these 7 years, filling some of the void left by my own mother. But Silas had shattered that too. I pulled out my phone, showing her the video of my conversation with Silas that night. Mom, don't blame me, this was his choice. Her fingers shook as she took the phone. When she finished watching, she collapsed onto the floor, lips moving soundlessly before she found her voice. Linda. Please, Silas and Vivian, they're nothing to each other. I helped her up. My Césarine wound throbbing just as I'd softened to Silas, handing him his passport and card despite his leaving me in labor. I know there's no physical thing between them. But Silas abandoned his wife and daughter to rush into a war zone for her, that says everything. My voice stayed steady. He'd rather a daughter grow up fatherless. Me a widow, then let her go, he has to live with that. Her face drained of color. She tried to speak, failed, then stood, trembling. Rest well, I'll go. She looked 10 years older as she hurried out. I called her back. Though I hated to, Mom, when good for you and Dad to move out of my place this week. She turned. I gasped, can't you wait? I shook my head. Silas didn't wait to take me to the hospital when my water broke. Did he? I just want our marital assets sorted before he comes back. Something in my words finally broke her. She left, shuffling weakly. I sighed, lying back. My wound had started bleeding from helping her up. It hurt, but I calmly called the center's doctor to redress it. That night, my father burst in. Furious, what's this about you mass texting that you're divorcing Silas? His outburst jogged my memory after my mother-in-law left. I tried to watch a show, but my phone blew up. Silas's colleagues, cousins, friends, all pestering for updates. Fed up, I sent a mass text mirroring his. Sorry, but Mr. Silas and I will divorce once he returns. I know nothing about his situation in the war zone, nor his injuries. For updates, contact his parents. It worked. The messages stopped. My father kicked my bed. How can you be so selfish? Your husband's trapped overseas. Maybe dead, and you're in a rush to divorce? He raged. Is this how I raised you? Heartless. Do you know how the relatives are judging me? I scoffed. So I should drag my post-labor body around, begging favors to save a man who flew into a war for his ex? Dad, you of all people should know men like him won't appreciate this. They'll take it for granted. He trembled with rage, but I knew why he cared. His son-in-law's crisis made him look bad if he didn't intervene. He ranted a little more, then left, never asking about my wound or our daughter. I wasn't hurt, just annoyed. Our daughter, woken by the noise, wailed. I scooped her up, choosing her, and the room fell quiet again. When my father saw I wasn't going to answer, he kicked my hospital bed violently in his rage. How can you be so selfish? Your husband's still stuck in that war zone. God knows if he's alive or dead, and you're in such a hurry to divorce him. Is this how I raised you, so heartless? Do you have any idea how the relatives are slandering me behind my back? I'm drowning in their gossip. I curled my lips in a smear. So you're saying I should drag my postpartum body around, begging favors to save a husband who knowingly flew into a war zone to find his ex-girlfriend? That's what you call loyalty? Men know men best. Do you really think Silas would ever be grateful for that? My words left him trembling with fury, but I knew why. I knew why. My mother had been frail, unfit for a second pregnancy, yet my father, obsessed with having a son, had lied to her, tricked her into trying. In the end, she died in childbirth. Both mother and child lost the claim to regret it later, but regret didn't stop him from marrying a new wife the next year, or having a son with her the year after that. Men know men best. Silas would either die in that war zone, or if this were some romance story. No matter what I did back home, he and that war correspondent ex would rekindle their love even if nothing physical happened between them. Could I ever stay in this marriage? Could I live with a man who'd risk his life for another woman? If divorce was inevitable, why not minimize the damage to myself? Dad and I had always been distant. He'd only rushed over because his son-in-law was in crisis. He couldn't not show up. For appearance's sake he hurled a few more angry accusations. Then left the postnatal center. Not once did he ask if my wound hurt, or if our newborn daughter was well. I didn't feel hurt. Just irritated. Our daughter, woken by the commotion, was screaming her lungs out. After that, my life settled into a cold calm. I put the house Silas and I shared up for sale at a low price. I had all the furniture in our marital home thrown out, packed up Silas's personal things, and sent them to his parents' place. Even the crib, stroller, and clothes he'd bought for a daughter, I tossed them all. The father who didn't love her, she didn't need his leftovers. Before selling the house, I asked my mother-in-law if she wanted to buy my half. She hesitated, so I advised her gently. Mom, maybe you and Dad should rent for a while. Keep the money from the sale and your savings if Silas comes back disabled, paralyzed. Even you'll need that money to get by. Her face flushed purple with shock. My father-in-law, enraged, raised his hand as if to slap me. I stayed calm. Dad, didn't you just spend $1 million to pull strings? You finally got a lead to get Silas repatriated. Don't you ruin it by hitting me. You'd end up in jail, and Silas and Mom would need you. With that, I had the postnatal center staff see them out. Everything was going to plan. The only thing sticking in my craw like a splinter I couldn't dislodge was the bank statement my lawyer said. Silas had been donating to poor children overseas for 7 years. Small sums, around $3,000, large ones, $50,000, even $100,000. All told, over $1 million. Every cent went to Vivian's Q International Children's Charity, where she was the director. All these years, Silas and I had split expenses. Even this year, while I was pregnant, he covered himself, I covered me and the baby. I thought he was saving his salary. Instead, he'd poured it all into funding a foreign charity. If he'd donated to kids here in our country, I might have understood, but we still have hundreds of millions going hungry at home. And he was over here fretting over foreign children. Our daughter didn't even have a school district house, yet he drained his savings to prop up his ex's charity. Any last flicker of affection died right then. By the time my confinement ended, Silas was finally repatriated. I let out a breath. At least my father-in-law's $1 million hadn't been a scam. But a sharp pain stabbed my chest. I pushed it down, put on makeup, got dressed, and headed to the airport. Everything was settled. It was time to hand him the divorce papers. The arrival lounge was packed with his relatives, friends, and parents. When I walked in, all eyes turned to me, curious, accusatory. I ignored them. Soon, Silas emerged, pushed in a wheelchair by staff. Aiden girl walked beside him, close enough that their arms brushed as they stepped off the jet bridge. She tripped over a step. Silas lurched up from the wheelchair, panic in his voice. Be careful, your leg's still got a bullet wound. My fingers curled into fists. In 7 years of marriage, he'd never looked at me like that when I stumbled or banged my knee on a table. He'd just row slightly and go back to what he was doing. So this was the lively Silas his friend had talked about. But only for her another hot, stinging pain seared my chest before I could dwell on it. Silas's wheelchair reached the crowd. He hugged his parents tightly, voice cracking, "Mom. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I worried you." Exhausted from weeks of fear, sobbed into his shoulder. The scene was enough to make anyone's eyes water. Silas's weeks of silence had left the old couple drained. Body and soul they clung to him, sobbing uncontrollably, the raw emotion of it turning every eye in the room glassy. After embracing his parents, Silas finally turned to me. The second he saw me, his eyes flared red. I stepped forward, but he didn't notice my empty belly, nor the coldness in my expression. It was the onlookers who stared, their gazes sharp with judgment. Silas grabbed my hand, his voice breaking as he wept. "Linda. I did it. I kept my promise. I came home safe." 2 warm tears splashed onto the back of my hand, cloying, almost sickening. I brushed them off with a light pat to his knuckles. "Good that you're home." Then, calmly, I pulled out the divorce papers I'd prepared. "I need to get back to our daughter. So if you're up to it, could you sign these?" Silas's eyes widened, disbelief crashing over his face. But I stayed steady. "Silas, the night you left, I told you. If you ran off to that war zone, you'd face the consequences." My gaze flickered to his leg, where bandages stained with darkening blood peeked through. Consequences like getting half your leg blown to bits overseas. Consequences like keeping your parents up night after night, scrambling to pull strings to get you home. Consequences like losing me. Losing our daughter, losing the life we built. I held his stare. "You ray, man." "Silas. A man keeps his word." He trembled. Maybe he'd never imagined me so unyielding. After 7 years of marriage I'd never fought, never fussed if he wouldn't give me money. I didn't ask if he shirked chores. I picked up the slack even when he asked for space. Sleeping in his study 2 nights a week, I'd agreed. He'd been sure I loved him too much to leave, and I had. I'd been terrified of marriage, terrified of children, but for him, I'd taken that leap. It was the only courage I'd ever mustered, but Silas had shattered it, pushing me down the same path as my mother. I didn't hate him. This was my choice, and I'd live with it, but didn't make me a doormat. Endless patience for his selfishness. Letting him keep a place for another woman in his heart during our marriage had been my limit. Just as Silas and I locked eyes, Vivian hurried over, flustered. "Sister-in-law, there's nothing between Silas and me. You ray misunderstanding." I scoffed. Lips curling. "Misunderstanding doesn't matter, but if you want to clear things up, you could start by returning the $1,000,000. I pulled out Silas's bank statements, slapping them lightly in my palm. "This is what he's funneled into your foundation over the years, our marital assets. Even as donations, I have the right to reclaim them. Sue you, and your little charity might find itself in hot water. Wouldn't it?" I smiled, sharp as a blade, "and lose the sister-in-law act. You're his ex, calling him Silas like that. It makes me sick." I glanced at Silas. His face now ashen. "Guess you're not signing today. No matter. I'll let you rest. Get better soon so you can hobble into that divorce office." I turned, chin high, ignoring the stares, and walked out of the airport. Only I knew that beneath that proud posture, my nails dug fiercely into my palms. Sharp enough to hurt. Divorce is like ripping off a layer of skin. Some can't stand the pain, but I could. I always had. I rushed home after delivering the papers, but our daughter, sensing my absence, was wailing, her face flushed. My heart twisted. I fumbled to lift my shirt and nurse her. Her warm weight against me finally breaking. The damn tears spilled as I whispered, "I'm sorry, Elena. You shouldn't have to grow up without a father, but I promise you'll have all of mine." I didn't seek updates on Silas. But what reached me anyway: sepsis, ICU, a leg hanging the balance. His mother came begging, again and again, "Linda, please. Just visit him." He mumbles your name non-stop. "Take Ale and I'll let him see her. Just once." I refused, hard as it was. Elena had a cold. Hospitals were breeding grounds for germs, and Silas had just come from a war zone. What if there was an undetected infection? I wouldn't risk my daughter's health to soothe his guilt. Even if he'd stayed home, I wouldn't take a 1-month-old to a hospital during an illness, and if he hadn't run off, he wouldn't be in this mess. Each visit left his mother looking older, more defeated. I ached for her. After all, she'd been kind to me, but all I could do was squeeze her hand, murmuring empty reassurance. "She's strong. He'll pull through." My father-in-law, far less temperate than his wife, came to my house several times to make a scene. Each time I shut him out, he'd bang on the door so hard it thundered our sick little girl would scream herself hoarse, vomiting violently from the fright every single time. Even our nanny couldn't stand it with shameless people. The baby's so tiny, she needs peace and quiet. But they barge in making trouble every few days. She fumed their own son ran off overseas chasing some other woman, got shot and crippled. And now they're morally blackmailing you. Wanting their only granddaughter to visit that sorry excuse for a son in the hospital. Visit what? Good riddance if he's gone. At night I got your call and rushed over. I found you on the floor, blood and amniotic fluid soaking you, writhing in pain. And the house was empty. It broke my heart. She went on, if you were my daughter, I'd have half a mind to finish off that whole family. I said nothing to her tirade, but I knew she was right. This house was no longer livable. After hesitating in my room for a while, I turned to her. Your home's in the countryside, right? Could my daughter and I stay with you for a year? I'll pay rent, of course. She blinked. Then, seeing how tough things were for me, quickly replied, no need for rent. Just come. It's not much, though I'm afraid. I cut her off with a faint smile. Could it be worse than here? The countryside has fresh air, fewer people. It's better for Elena. She agreed at once. Once we decided to head to her hometown, we started packing that same day. Ready to drive out at dawn the next morning. Even though she'd said no rent, I transferred $20,000 to her on the spot as payment for the year. In that moment, I was grateful. I'd never relied on Silas, not once. Without that independence, I could never have acted so decisively. We were hauling our bags to the underground garage when I opened the door and found Vivian standing there. She frowned at our luggage. Silas is in the hospital, fighting for his life, and you're moving out. Her tone was half accusation, half complaint. That holier-than-thou look on her face made my stomach turn. Didn't you do this to him? I shot back. Now you're lecturing me from your moral high horse. I scoffed. Dignity is a good thing. Maybe you should pick some up off the floor. Her face soured. You Ray, being so petty. I've told you 100 times there's nothing between Silas and me. I had no idea he'd come to the war zone for me. Her words made me laugh. No contact. Then how'd he know your foundation was short on cash? Funny how he always sent money exactly when you needed it. Her face paled. She's paled. I cut her off. Spit it out or shut up. No rule, says a famous war correspondent. Can't be a homewrecker. People have layers. I get it. She went paler. Still, stop spreading lies. I never meddled in your marriage. And I never wanted to. I smiled. What a coincidence. I never wanted to meddle in your love story with Silas. Either, so do whatever you want to, and if Silas wakes up, tell him not to contact me unless it's to sign the divorce papers. With that, I shouldered past her and stepped into the elevator. The nanny followed, holding Elena, her eyes blazing. You do think they could shoot lasers after that? I stopped paying any attention to Silas or Vivian. I changed my phone number, took my daughter, and settled into the nanny's home. Her place was simple, but peaceful. Her husband worked in another city, her son was in college. Every day, I stumbled around with Elena, feeding chickens and ducks. It was the most relaxed, happy stretch I'd had in ages. When Elena turned 1, I finally made my way back to the city Silas and I had shared. I opened WeChat for the first time in a year. And the flood of messages crashed my phone. I deleted them all, and once it quieted down, I texted Silas. I'm back. When are you free to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau and get this divorce over with? He didn't reply. I was starting to wonder if he'd actually died when there was a sudden knock at the door. I jumped, then motioned frantically to the nanny, who hurried to take Elena to the back room. Once the door closed, I answered. I froze when I saw Silas standing there, then my eyes fell to his empty pant leg and it all clicked. I hadn't wanted to let him in, but he looked so pitiful, leaning on that crutch, that I softened. Stepping aside to let him pass, he de-aged, grown haggard, especially with that vacant sleeve where his legs should be. Silas's eyes went red the second he saw me move. He tried to speak, stammering, but I held up a hand. Sit first, no rush. As soon as he settled on the couch, I politely set out fruit and poured him tea. Steam curled between us just like it had for 7 years of marriage. Those quiet afternoons on the balcony, him reading, me playing Go, a stillness woven through the peace. Silas was the first to speak, as always. Linda, I miss you so much. I know I hurt you. But please don't divorce me. I can't lose you. His whole back trembled as he spoke. his empty pant leg swaying with the tremors of his sobs. I'd known divorce wouldn't be easy, so I simply lifted my teacup and took a slow sip. I already struggled to care for a daughter. I don't need the added burden of a disabled man. The words were harsh, but true. Silas's face drained of all color. Still, I didn't soften. I know life's hard for you now, but I'm not a charity. I don't owe you a rescue. The only thing I can do is ease the property split and the papers I gave you. I get 60. You get 40 given how tough things are. I can switch it. You get 60. I get 40. His lips quivered. Must you be so cruel? When I was in the ICU, you took the baby and left without a word. Do you know how close I was to dying? I met his wounded tone with a calm smile. Now. I don't. And why would I? You'd bear the consequences alone. You agreed. He clenched his fists. You never said you'd divorce me. His words made me laugh. I pulled out my phone and showed him the video from that night. No shouting, no arguments. But my blood, pooling between my legs, footprints staining the floor. Even as he walked out he missed every drop. And now he resented me. When he finished watching, Silas slumped back on the couch, defeated. I sipped my tea again. Steady. I can compromise more. You can see our daughter once a month. If she wants more contact when she's older, I'll let it happen. You're disabled now. Doubt your old finance firm will take you back. And the world isn't kind to people like you. Don't even think about fighting for custody. You chose to abandon her once. Spare me the fatherly love act. And for the same reason your finances. I won't ask for child support. I paused, finally letting a flicker of pity seep in. Silas, all I want is a quiet divorce. No fights. No drama. I did love you, once we made a mess of things. But maybe we can be friends after, for her sake, at least. His face turned ashen, all hope extinguished. He managed to trembling, fine. Tomorrow, Nina. Ma'am. I'll be at the Civil Affairs Bureau. He left on his crutches. Minutes later, my phone rang. The caller. Silas's brother's wife. We met, but rarely spoke. Curious. I answered. Girl, you're finally back, she gushed. You have no idea. You're my hero now. I frowned, sensing my confusion. She went on, after you left. Silas's medical bills were tens of thousands a day. His parents sold their hometown house. Borrowed from my husband and all their friends. That's what kept him alive. Let me tell you, if you'd stayed, you'd be drowning in $1 million in debt right now. And Vivian, at first, she played the devoted nurse. Bathing him, feeding him. Then, a month later, she bailed. Said work called her overseas. Theft, Calden teased, and the hassle of caring for a cripple. Worst part. When everyone was scraping up money for his treatment, Vivian didn't pitch in a cent. All that effort Silas put in to save her. What a waste. I'd seen it coming. A bitter smile tugged at my lips. Whatever happens now, it's not my problem as long as he doesn't dump his medical debts on me. We can part amicably. Thankfully, Silas had some decency left. At the bureau the next day, he said nothing of his debts, signed the same papers. 60-40 in my favor. I didn't protest. Free money, why refuse? We walked out with our divorce certificates. Silas's eyes glistened and he fumbled for words. Then, can I see her today? Of course. I had the nanny bring Elena down. When Silas saw her, he wept, red-eyed. He turned to me. If I'd stayed, would everything be different? I smiled. I don't know, but she'd have a father. He cried harder. I looked away. After half an hour, I said gently, she needs her nap. Go home, come back next month. He clenched his fist tightly. But left without a word. For years, he visited monthly, playing with her briefly. Sometimes he'd ask if she wanted to visit her grandmother. I always said no. When she turned 6, I let her decide. She went once, then never again. Her grandfather spent the whole meal badmouthing me. After she turned 10, Silas remarried a woman with little education, who brought a son. He stopped visiting as often. I don't know how he's faring, but Elena and I, we're fine. We travel the world on holidays. Sometimes I ask if she resents me for taking her father away. She rolls her eyes like I don't have enough father figures. You bring home a new guy every other week to entertain me. I'm starting to worry I'll never want to get married.